Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video that I'm making is a get well card I made for my friend Kelsey who's feeling a bit under the weather. Making get well cards are an opportunity to bring a lot of color into your design that you might not think of in your regular thinking of you cards or your birthday cards, because you want the recipient of the card to get a little pick-me-up, and color is always a good thing to do. I found the design for this card on Pinterest, and this is in fact not the final card that I sent to Kelsey, because as I made that card there were a couple of issues that I ran into that I thought that I could resolve if I changed the design around a little bit, and I'll go through that as I go through the video. This card has a few unusual measurements than I usually do, and there were some issues with the striping that I couldn't resolve unless I altered the dimensions a little bit, but it still fits in a standard size envelope. So let me clear these things away and show you how I made the card. Okay, I'll start with the papers that I'm using. I have a card base which is cut a little bit larger than usual. This is cut 8.5 by 5 5/8, scored at 4 1/4. I have a white panel, which I had to make a note so I wouldn't forget. This is cut 5 5/8 by 3 3/4, and another white panel which is cut 5.5 by 3 3/4. And I have 5, but what is this 6th one coming along for the ride? Sorry. 5 strips of paper which are cut 4 1/4 by 1 1/8. 1 1/8. 1 away? No, 1 1/4, but it has to be trimmed a little bit to fit onto the card base. So we'll go through that in a second. So I have green, purple, orange, blue, and red. This is the colors of the rainbow except for yellow. The stamp set I'm using today is Sincere Salutations by Stampin Up and Edgy Eloquence, also by Stampin Up. I'm going to be using Versamark because I'm going to be doing some embossing. And I also am going to be using Versafine Onyx Black. I have a EK Success Lacy border punch. You could use any border punch that you had which you thought would be a nice edging. And I'm going to have rhinestones. I'm going to be using Ranger Multi-Medium Matte. I have a Stampin Up Small Butterfly punch and the Elegant Butterfly punch. I'll need glue dots, and I will also be using Stampin Up Dazzling Diamonds, which is a very fine glitter. If you don't have this, any fine glitter will do. And I'm using a Heat-n-stick, also by Stampin Up. This powder, when you put it onto your card, you heat it up with your heat tool, and instead of embossing it becomes sticky, and then you can adhere the Dazzling Diamonds to it. After you do that, you heat it again and your seal becomes permanent. So I'll go through that also. And I think that's what I'm going to need for the card. So let me clear these things away and go through the first steps of the card making. I'm going to link a picture of the card design as I originally did it. And it used this Martha Stewart butterfly punch, but this punch, I don't know if I got a defective one or if it was intended to be as difficult it is, but closing it, you see it's closing with quite a bit of force. Right now, let me grab a piece of paper real quick. When you actually punch this punch, it's really hard to get it through, and I have to use 2 hands and then some So I'm not even going to try. I can show you as far as I got. There. See, that is not going to make it. So after there were 5 butterflies, and after the first one, I thought I have to do this differently. So that's why I'm not sticking to the original design, which used this punch. So Kelsey, if you're watching and you know that you have 5 butterflies punched out and you saw what I went through, you know I love you, girl. Okay, let me move on to the first step. All right, I'm going to quickly go through a little bit of an explanation. I don't want to get too verbose in this video, but it's easier to explain it now than as I go ahead. These stripes, in order to fit, I needed to trim them just a little bit, and I don't know if you can see it, but I made a little pencil line on here of where I need to trim it so that it fits. But in order to have a nice cushion to cut that butterfly out, I needed it to be just a little bit bigger, and I didn't want to do the trimming until after I got the butterfly. So once I get the butterfly out, I'm going to then need to get the smaller butterfly out, and then what's left I will just cut it off, and that's what I'll use here. I am going to just go through the steps of that, and I'm not going to explain it too much in detail while I'm doing it, so I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you ahead of time. Alright, so what I'm doing here is making my own glitter paper with the Dazzling diamonds. So I'm going to be using the Versamark, and I need to get a piece of paper to protect my work surface, and I need to get my Heat-n-stick powder ready to go. So I keep my powders that I use a lot, and there's a lot of it in these little Tupperware things with the little spoon on the, this is a command hook that is stuck to the lid. So just take the spoon and scoop it directly onto the paper if it's something that is too big to dip in, but this will dip in. So the first thing to do is take the Versamark pad and just press it directly onto the cardstock. Just make sure you get pretty good coverage. Then you take this and dip it right into the Heat-n-stick powder, and it looks like embossing powder, but it's not. Knock off the excess. And now I'm going to bring in my heat tool, and I'm going to let my heat tool heat up a little bit to make this easier. It's going to be a little bit noisy, but I want to do this real time so you can see what you're looking for as you do this. Here we go. So you know it's right when the powder just all turns clear, and it happens very quickly, as you can see. Alright, that's that. And now I want to take the Dazzling diamonds, which I should have opened and didn't, and tuck this in that. Now this is really messy, and I've got glitter going all over every surface of this table, but it's really fine, so you can see it. Now this sticks to the Heat-n-stick, but it's not permanent yet. You have to heat it again, and then it'll be permanent. And it won't be very visual that you have heated it enough, and it's a very short trip from sticking to burning it, so be really careful. And that's probably enough. Give this a second to cool. And you see it is stuck in place. Now, I'm going to take the butterfly punch and punch out the butterfly. I'm going to hold it back so that I can see. Forgive me. Yep, that's that one. Now I'm going to take the smaller punch, flip it over because I need the solid side for this one. Get this little extra bits that I don't need. There. And this I'm just going to trim it off. Don't need all that crazy edge to make it more difficult as I go. So don't throw this away, you still need it. So I'm going to go through and speed up the rest, but it's the same steps I'll be following one by one. Okay, actually this is a Swiffer thingy that is good for getting glitter and stuff like that. I got that at the dollar store. Okay, so I'm going to quickly trim these little pieces of paper up and then move on to the next step. This is when it's good to have a guillotine cutter because you can get these very narrow cuts that way. Alright, now taking the smaller of the two panels, I'm going to line the papers up in order. And tape them down. Now, as you see, it's a little bit off. It's a little bit taller than I want it to be, so I now have to do a little bit of trimming. So I cut a very small bit off the purple and a very small bit off of the red so that you end up with 5.5. What was it, 4.25? 5.25, sorry. No, I was right, 5.5. Duh. Second guess yourself, Lorene. So actually, it looks like I'm pretty close. I'll double check with my card base, make sure I have it. Check twice, cut once. Just a little. And then the other side. And if you didn't line up the edges, if you didn't like how it was going, you could also cut off just a little bit on this side, and then it'll be super straight. There. Set that aside. Now this piece will be border punched on one side. The thing about border punches, you have to, it's your work is usually going to be wider than this. So you start with one about halfway through. Make sure you push it flush against the back. Start from this side, about halfway through, and punch it, and then slide it, and you'll see that there are markings on the punch itself, and you line it up matching the markings, and then you know that you can safely punch and the pattern will follow. This can be very tricky, and you may end up having to go through quite a lot of paper before you get it right, because it's very easy to misalign. Just take your time and you'll be fine. There we go. Pretty good. This is actually the first time I did it without making mistakes. This is about the 6th one that I've punched. Okay. Now the rest is just simple assembly, so I will just let the video run. Okay, the butterflies. The Dazzling Diamonds doesn't like adhesive very well, but the multi-matte medium will work very well. You just have to allow for a little bit of time for it to dry. So, taking the back side of the little guy, and this is an extra extra fine tube which I got separately from the bottle. This is not the one that comes on it. This allows you to make really small bits of glue and be very precise. So it's just a matter of taking the solid color and gluing it in place on top. It just takes a minute to dry. That's the finished card. I hope you enjoyed watching me make this card. I hope I didn't confuse you a little bit with those calculations. One thing I'd like to mention, when you use the multi-matte medium on the gluing, you have to allow a few minutes for the glue to set. I didn't show that, but I waited about 20 minutes. And I'm going to bend the wings up a little bit to make it look like they're flying, but not too much because I don't want to tear it. Let me get the other wing. And of course, once you mail it, the wing will lay a bit flatter, but it's better if you give it to them. Okay, I'd like to thank my brother David for the music that he provides for my channel. And I hope that you will subscribe to my channel. I put out new content pretty frequently. If there's anything that you'd like to see me make, let me know and I will try to get to it as soon as I can. Thanks for watching and have a great day.